Happy holidays. My name is Joshua Simmers, and I love to cook. I live in Mandan, North Dakota, and last year at Thanksgiving we tried a new recipe using some green beans, fresh green beans, to make the traditional holiday green bean hot dish a lot of people like with cream of mushroom soup. And it's actually pretty easy to make on your own. So if you carve out a little bit of time when you're trying to pull all those last minute together things, it'll be pretty easy. Otherwise, you can just let it set in the oven and it'll come out pretty nice. This year we used green beans from our garden, and I just boiled them. If you don't boil them first, they won't be as nice and tender cooking in the oven. So I've got about 2 pounds of green beans that are chopped up. They're not shredded like you oftentimes would like in your green bean casserole, but you're going to get a lot more flavors with this recipe than you would otherwise. I also went ahead and chopped up 8 ounces of mushrooms. You could also use sliced mushrooms, but I was hoping for just a little bit of a smaller pieces, but yet big morsels enough to get that good mushroom flavor. These are Baby Bella, but last year we used the white button mushrooms, and of course those work just fine. The grocery store was just out of the kind that I wanted today. I took a half onion and I sliced it up pretty thin, and I'm soaking it in milk right now so it will retain the coating of the flour to get good onion rings for the top of the casserole. And some sour cream. I use fat-free. I think it can offer just as much flavor as regular fattening sour cream. And I use that instead of milk because it's a little thicker and you don't want this dish to get too runny. I've got some butter right here that we're going to start off with a little roux, and some dried onion and some thyme. You can use different spices, but I like just a pinch of thyme. I think that'll be nice in the flavor. Worcestershire sauce is kind of the secret ingredient. It gives it a little kick that you wouldn't have otherwise. Alright, so we're just going to add some butter into the pan and get that nice and melting. We've got this over medium-high heat so we can make a good roux. And we'll want to use equal parts of flour, so about 2 tablespoons of flour in here. Remember, it's always easier to add a little later, so I usually start off with about 1.5 tablespoons. So now that our butter and flour are mixed together, and there's no clumps, and it's well gathered, and it's good and hot. Alright, so you want to add your milk very slowly to your roux, and just let each little bit gather in until you get a nice batter in your pan. I'm using buttermilk today instead of regular milk, so I'm curious to see how this will turn out. You can tell the difference in the smell. Alright, so now we've got our roux is starting to thicken into a little bit of a broader consistency. It's covering a lot of the pan. We can go ahead and add our mushrooms, and this is a one-shot deal. And at this point we're only using the pan to stir everything together. So we've got our sour cream and our mushrooms in, and we're just going to stir this together so we can mix it into the casserole pan. Once we have this fairly well stirred in, we can go ahead and add our little bit of spice and Worcestershire sauce. Now, I'm not very good at measuring. I typically don't use any measuring spoons, but today we'll plan on adding a full tablespoon into the dish, and we can just mix that right in. We also talked about adding some dried onion. Again, probably just 1 tablespoon will do. And there we go, we've got our tablespoon. And just because I like just a little bit of mild flavor coming through, we're going to go ahead and add our thyme. And at that, just a pinch. Remember, we don't want to taste it, we just want it to add to the flavor. At this point, we can turn the heat off because we're going to go ahead and mix this into the casserole dish. And like I told you before, cheese makes everything better. So today, I'm going to go ahead and add 1 cup of mozzarella cheese. I'm going to go ahead and grab the casserole dish so we can mix these two things together and put them in the oven so those mushrooms cook and the flavors start to come together. It needs at least 25 minutes at 350 degrees, but the nice part about this is that if you need it to stay in the oven longer, it'll do just fine, and that'll give you the time and flexibility you need to eat and time your other dishes according to your schedule. We'll go ahead and add the beans first because that sauce will drip down over them. So this sauce will go down over the beans real nice and easy. It'll just soak right into it. But of course we want to stir it up just a little bit anyway. Don't forget to spray your pan with a little bit of nonstick. Making onion rings is pretty simple. Some people like to use a baking soda batter. For this recipe, I just think keep it really simple. Slice your onions thin, soak them in milk so they hold to the flour, and then dip them in the flour, and then you're ready to fry them. You may choose to cut yours into smaller pieces, but I like the big rings. And we just get them coated in the flour. And then we're ready to fry them. We're back in the kitchen now, just so we can fry up our onion rings. We're almost done. And we'll know that our oil is hot enough when we go ahead and put some water into it and the water sizzles. So our oil is pretty much hot enough. Medium-high heat is plenty. And this is going to get a little loud. Now when you think about those onions that come in the box for your green bean casserole, they're typically pretty hard and pretty crispy. That means you're going to have to fry your onions until they're nice and golden brown, or even just a little bit more than golden brown, so they get that nice burnt flavor, hard texture to go on top of your soft green beans. Again, these are going to take a couple minutes to get nice and golden. Alright, so we can see that some of our onions are getting to that place where we want them to be. So our casserole has been baking. Our onion rings just finished. We're going to go ahead and open up and pull it out. We can go ahead and put our onion rings on top to give it that final presentation. So we have our green bean casserole. Not too hard, but especially hearty and delicious, and probably a little healthier than what you're used to as well. Happy holidays.